And especially you see this a lot in your retrospectives of, hey, here are my expected outcomes that I want. And you're driving the team to get to these expected outcomes. But sometimes, especially as a facilitator, you have to remember to stay neutral, right? Because you have to be able to allow that team to grow, to understand, to be able to see exactly what's ahead of them. Because what you may think is an issue may not necessarily be an issue for somebody else.
Welcome to the Product Agility Podcast, the missing link between agile and product. The purpose of this podcast is to share practical tips, strategies, and stories from world-class thought leaders and practitioners. Why, I hear you ask? Well, I want to increase your knowledge and your motivation to experiment so that together we can create ever more successful products. My name is Ben Maynard, and I'm your host. What has driven me for the last decade to bridge the gap between agility and product is a deep-rooted belief that people and products evolving together can achieve mutual excellence.
And in this episode, we are joined by CP Richardson. Now, CP Richardson is one of the loveliest human beings that I think I've had on the podcast. At some point during this episode, we actually became friends. Let me know if you can tell the moment when it happened. Now, CP Richardson is the co-chair of Agile in Colour. Agile in Colour is an initiative whose goal is to increase the development opportunities for people of colour in the Agile community. So he's an awesome person with a good heart, and this initiative of Agile in Colour is something that I can truly get behind and help promote. CP Richardson is also an accreditor for IC Agile, so if you ever considered having any of their courses, Product Agile or otherwise, accredited, then CP gives you some useful tips and insights into this during this episode. And last but by no means least, he is also Portfolio Delivery Manager, lead no less, for ArcXP. ArcXP is a really interesting platform/product that was spun out of the Washington Post as a consequence of Jeff Bezos taking over a number of years ago. But more on that on a few episodes' time. Before we begin, just have one favour to ask. If you have any friends you think would enjoy this episode or any other episodes, who knows what golden nuggets they will find, then please just recommend it to one person. Doing that helps me grow the podcast and helps me entice ever more popular and noteworthy guests. So anyway, thank you for listening to this, and let's get into it, shall we? Hello, everybody. It's nice to have you back. Today, I am joined by somebody who I have the privilege to say has thoroughly examined my work when it comes to IC Agile courses. He is very thorough. His name is, and I'm going to read it as it says on LinkedIn, Christopher C.P. Richardson, known for being the chaser of unicorns. Or not. Not
it depends on the scenario. It depends on the scenario.
Yeah, because sometimes chasing unicorns is fine. Like it's permitted. Other times,
other times suspect.
Like national parks, they don't take kindly.
No, they don't. I got a talking to from Park Ranger about that one time. It was needless to say, I don't do it again.
Yeah, no. I'm kind of joking. I haven't been in a national park since I was there with I'm not going to make a Yogi Bear joke. Let's move on.
I mean, smarter than the average bear. I get it. Like, trust me, I'm picking up what you're putting down.
I'm already loving this. Right. So we were going to talk about, I suppose, initially, because we've got you here for a couple of episodes at least, and we met when myself and a man called John Spruce had created an IC Agile facilitator course, and you were he looks down, looks at his notes, his IC Agile accreditor.
Yes. For
the course, but not for me and John as capable instructors. For that happened afterwards.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. I couldn't be there for that one because I'm sure y'all are fantastic. Anyway, I'm sure.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, we are. And although I think it's changed back now, I think you can get accredited. You can get the course accredited, and you can get accredited as an instructor.
Yeah, if I am not mistaken, starting in 2023, if you are doing a course through IC Agile, and again, I want to make sure I get this right. This is tentative of you talking to IC Agile to verify my information because I know they would kill me if I get it wrong. If you're doing a course, and you're the person who put the course materials together, you can do your course accreditation along with your instructor. And it makes that process a lot more seamless. So then you're not doing hey, I'm doing this entire course. I put all the work in. And now I have to do my 3 hours with my course reviewer, get certified in that, and then have to turn around and do it in a separate instructor experience. We're just trying to make it a little bit more seamless for folks.
That's good. I think that's what it used to be like. And then they changed it. And then they changed it when I met you. And then me and John had John not so much because John's a little bit less grumpy than I am, but I had a real proper moan about it.
You are not the only ones who have had it, but again, we're and that's the beautiful thing about agility, right? You're learning, you're experiencing, and you're doing things differently to see what fits for your client or customer base. So,
no, it's great. It's great. The feedback we listen to, changes have been made, and without wanting to make, it's not an advert for IC Agile. I am not affiliated, other than delivering some of their accredited courses. I don't know why I'm putting a disclaimer, and it's my podcast. I can do what I like, but I thought I'd make that clear. But the one thing I do love about IC Agile is that they come up with solid learning outcomes, and then they allow you reasonable carte blanche, as long as you're competent, to deliver those and meet those in the way that you see fit. And I think that's one of the very enticing things for me. And so we're going to be. Well, I am working on the Lean Portfolio Management course, which by the time this podcast goes out, it's probably going to be accredited, and it's been a joy. I always enjoy that process. And I also, CP, I enjoyed the process of being having our coursework frisked by you. But CP, before we go into too much talking about facilitation, which is a topic on this one, would you mind giving our listeners a little bit of an introduction to your good self?
Yeah, for sure. So as they mentioned earlier, my name is Christopher CP Richardson. Everybody calls me CP. If you see me out and about either in a conference space, speaking space, or just on LinkedIn, because apparently I had a post that was featured on LinkedIn here recently of all things. Yeah, no, it was not the type of post that I wanted to feature. It was about layoffs, and it was me basically griping about companies in general. So like of all posts, guys, not the post I wanted to have. But anyways, yes. My name is CP Richardson. I currently work at the Washington Post, specifically within the division called ArcXP. ArcXP is specifically a cloud-native digital platform experience, so DXP, that helps enterprise companies, brands, and media organizations create and distribute content, deliver commerce solutions, and deliver powerful multi-channel experiences. That's a lot of cool stuff to say. Hey, we're a CMS platform tool that helps deliver a customized experience for you. So whether you are whether you're the Washington Post, or whether you're another news organization, not just news organizations, but internal companies, you can use our CMS platform to create an experience that is custom for you and delivers the results that you want to. And the neat thing about it is that we have a very, very broad, very, very wide customer base with 2,000 different sites and supported in 25 different countries and ever expanding. So, which is a really cool thing. If you ever get an opportunity to see an example, a site that I worked on, which is actually called SweetExchange.com, which is sponsored by which is used by the Golden State Warriors. So it's one of the coolest projects I got to work on, and I still don't have sweet seats, and I'm still mad about it. And I let people know very regularly that I want sweet seats as many times as I can through the Golden State Warriors. Maybe one day I'll get some sweet seats. If not, just courtside, I'm okay. I am not complaining. Courtside or suites, I'm okay with it.
That was a very professional sales pitch. I kind of feel like I want to sign up.
It's pretty rad. All right. But one of the things also that I do, as Ben mentioned earlier, is I also am a course and instructor accreditor for IC Agile. So if you are looking to put together course materials, or if you are looking to be an authorized instructor for IC Agile, you will come to somebody like me. We will review your materials, or we will listen to you deliver materials, and we will give you the thumbs up when you are good to go to deliver those course materials, and you can be an authorized course developer or instructor. We strongly encourage everybody to, if you're interested in teaching, or if you're interested in building your own course, that gives you the freedom to build it how you want to. And as Ben mentioned earlier, you have specific learning objectives that you have to hit, but you can build it however you want to. Come to us, and we will get you squared away.
Yeah, no, it's a nice little model. I have to admit, pains me to say it. Are you allowed? I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are you allowed to then go like freelance and say like, if you're interested in building a course, then you can pay me this much money, and I'll help you go through the process, as long as you don't then accredit and offer those additional consultancy services?
See, I'm gonna say like this. Absolutely not.
Are you sure, man?
I
Are you
am
sure?
I am 1,000% positive because you know what? I like what I do and I want to keep doing those things.
Yeah, no, I figured that was. I mean, right answer. Right answer. You know, you don't want to.
No,
That
not at all.
undermines the whole bloody thing, surely, if you're there
Oh,
kind
see,
of giving.
one thing I will say though, if you do have questions about like just the process in general, you can always shoot a message to team@icagile.com, and they will be able to get you squared away and be able to answer any of those questions. Also, you can reach out to me, and I'll be able to at least point you in the right direction for those types of questions at Christopher@icagile.com, and we'll be able to get you squared away. Because if it's not me, because all of our instructors, all of our course or instructor authorizers, or the entire team will be able to get you squared away. So,
Mm.
though it may not be from me, I can at least point you in the right direction. But yeah, definitely not a pay for play situation because again, I like what I do, and yeah, I would like to keep doing
Yeah, and I'm in no way inferring that that's the case.
it. Well, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
I'm not even going to make a joke
Fair
about
enough.
it because it's just dangerous territory. So,
Yes.
how come you got so good at facilitation that somebody came to you and said, "Do you want to come and be an accreditor for IC Agile?" Like, what was your journey, your facilitation journey, facilitator journey?
You know, and when you say that, a lot of times, like when people say like, "OMG, CP, you are great at this," I am so bad at taking compliments because I feel that my journey is always continuous, right? Because I don't think I'm ever actually good at that, and I'm not sure that because of upbringing, whether that's playing sports as a kid or whatever. But like for me, is that there's always room for improvement. Um, so I don't necessarily think of myself as good. I think of myself as just like just enough to be dangerous, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, for some context on my background, like through my experiences as a Scrum Master at Capital One, a large financial organization, to a small another SaaS company called Snag and Job, which is focused on hourly employees and the hiring management and work management system for them. There is tons of opportunities to work in a ton of different fields, working on massively different types of projects, and each team experience something different, right? So you may come in with one solution as a coach, as a scrum master, whatever the situation is, right? And you're stepping in, and especially you see this a lot in your retrospectives of, hey, here are my expected outcomes that I want, and you're driving the team to get to these expected outcomes. But sometimes, especially as a facilitator, you have to remember to stay neutral, right? Because you have to be able to allow that team to grow, to understand, to be able to see exactly what's ahead of them. Because what you may think is an issue may not necessarily be an issue for somebody else. And just through those experiences, a lot of times that's where you get really good and really sharp at being a facilitator because you can see the conflict happening. And I do a lot of hand gestures a lot of times, so I'm trying my best not to do this. But you see a
Wave
lot of
them around like you just don't care, man. It's fine.
you see a lot you see a lot of conflict. So like that divergent thinking, especially when
Yeah.
you're a facilitator, you see it happening real time. And it wasn't until like you see enough of these types of situations where you're like, okay, this type of friction or conflict is okay. But the thing about
Mhm.
it is, especially as a facilitator, you can't get it so wide that you run out of time in your time box, and
Mhm.
not to bring them back together. And so again, into that convergent point where they can
Yeah.
then make a decision and move forward. Again, those types of scenarios, it's through experience. And I
Mhm.
think what I have learned, I mean, I guess what other people saw in me is my ability just to allow people just to sometimes vent and allow them to express exactly what's going on, what's happening, but also be able to bring them back together.
Mhm.
Whether that's again through my time at Capital One or at Snag a Job or at they consulting for a few months until COVID happened, or even at my time at the Washington Post. Again, those techniques, regardless if you're a coach or a scrum master or a director or a VP, whatever, those types of skills are key and important. And even when you're in the course accreditation courses, right? Like there are many often times where you, Ben, or John have like an idea of how you want to do it, right? And I want you all, and you may have noticed, or you may have not noticed this, is that I'll provide that feedback, but I'll ask you, like, what do you think? Like, does this feedback feel appropriate? Does it make sense? Because again, my perspective may be different, and I don't want to come off as an authorizer saying, "Well, you have to do it this way," because,
Mm.
and then again, another plug for IC Agile and our courses is that you get to build a course however you want to. If you feel that you're meeting the need and you can express that you're meeting the need, by all means, absolutely go for it. Because again, that's what makes sense. So allow you to see where your differences are, and then converge, and then move forward with the decision. I said a whole bunch of that. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, I'm sure you're asking clarifying questions.
There's a few points to pick up on. One, I enjoyed our session when we got together and did the course accreditation, but did chat a lot of shit. Did get distracted by various things.
That we did.
Yeah. Well, I think
good things. Good things to be distracted by.
Good things. But yeah, and it was a nice way to spend a Sunday evening. I have to say,
That was.
As odd as that sounds when I say it out loud.
It
was enjoyable. It was enjoyable.
Yeah. I'm happy that it was.
It was. Well, mate, you wouldn't fucking be here, would you? If I didn't enjoy it.
Trust me, I'm pretty sure I would hear somebody like, "Man, why do I have to now go through this thing?" And this guy has no clue what you're talking. I'm sure you would have told me probably right then in the moment.
Yeah. Well, like, you haven't seen Shane Hasty on the podcast, have you?
No,
I haven't invited him on because I don't like him.
Fun fact of the day.
No, not actually true. I do really like him. But we haven't been able to
okay.
Yeah. Okay. Ben's got real. I really like him. We tried to find a time, but God, it was just like because of my diary and his diary and him living in New Zealand and traveling around. It's like trying to nail jelly to a wall. So if
I was like, I need to use that phrase. I like that phrase.
It's a good one. So Shane, if you're listening, hopefully by now we would have booked some time in. But I'm gonna make a note and chase him up because I can't wait to get Shane on. I think he's a legend. So the point about saying is that yes, you did do a good job at getting us back into what we would call, I suppose, the convergent zone. And I got to thinking about what you were saying about the diverge and converge. And first of all, my mind fell to the work of Sam Kaner in participatory decision making, talking about the convergent zone, which is when the options, the ideas, the thoughts are running wild. And it's about kind of letting that happen when it's a non-routine problem to solve, and then having the skills and the mindset and the will and the energy to then take them from that kind of convergent zone into the divergent into convergent. So you're bringing people together and kind of getting over that bit in the middle called the groan zone, which maybe we can talk about in a bit more depth. But then it kind of flipped in my head, and I recalled, well, when I was researching what knowledge workers are, and don't get me wrong, I don't know which came first, but when you look at some of the explanations of knowledge working, they say it is about divergent and convergent thinking.
Yep.
It's about going away on your own and thinking about stuff, and then getting together with people and you're thinking about stuff and it diverging. But it's about finding a way to converge it. So there is this magical thing, because then you look at specification by example, which again is about divergent and convergent. And there's a magical thing about this idea of us kind of getting broader and then narrowing in. Like I've never really thought about that deeply. I mean, it sounds good enough that people just accept it, right?
Yeah.
But I've never really thought about what's going on there from a human behavior or from a neuroscience perspective that kind of makes that so effective.
And there are people who are so much smarter than me that know these different, like, knows exactly what's going on from a human perspective. My experience has always been that everybody has an amazing idea. Folks want to move forward and do the best that they possibly can, right? One great phrase that I've learned throughout my career that I try my best to use in all situations is there are no bad dogs, right? Assume positive intent. Those types of scenarios, right? That everybody in those situations wants to do the best they can possibly do, but a lot of but a lot of times, unless you have the biggest platform, microphone, soapbox, whatever that euphemism you want to use in those type of scenarios, a lot of times it doesn't get heard, and you run into a scenario where I have this great idea, but nobody's going to listen to me about it. So then it just I just rather just sit back and be quiet again, into that, as you mentioned earlier, into that growth zone. And I think that's the part that where you make your buck, especially as a facilitator, is, and then those techniques again with the book you just mentioned that I have up here. I'm not going to embarrass myself and pull it out because I have it right next to me.
If I bend like that, then sorry for the people listening, I'm bending round and groaning because my back aches. Just to show that I can't reach the bookshelf, which is evidently clear if you're watching the video of this. Anyway, sorry.
No, you're good. No, you're fine. But I think that's where you make the most and make your bang for your buck as a facilitator, is to bring out those ideas that otherwise would go unheard. Because I think when you start to show people in that room that their opinion matters, they'll begin to open up more.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds ridiculously simple, but it's a hard technique to have, because it's one thing to say, hey, my opinion doesn't matter, or that person in the room said my opinion doesn't matter, and that's very easy surface level that some people may see, especially as a facilitator. But as a facilitator, you have to keep in mind not just those people who are quiet, but maybe there are different personality styles. Maybe some folks want to listen to the entire scenario before giving the feedback, so you have to be able to understand and pick up on those cues and pick up on those senses, and be able to say, okay, maybe it's not them not wanting to contribute. It's maybe that their style is, let me hear all of the ideas in the room, let me make sense of it, and then put together my best solution or best idea from that point. So again, as a facilitator, you have to be able to be able to discern that during those conversations. And again, that's not easy. And as coaches, as scrum masters, it is a skill that you're gonna not be excellent at, and you got to practice regularly, like with anything else. And until you do that, and until you practice it regularly, you're not going to be as good as you can be. Not saying that folks aren't good, because, like, as I mentioned earlier, I don't even feel like I'm good at it. I feel like I know just enough to be dangerous. So yeah.
Right, let's pick up on this idea. I subscribe to this idea about in any given situation, everyone's trying their best. Yes, I agree with that. However, it is a bit of a, what is they call it? A bit of a motherhood and apple pie statement. You know, it's one of those things that we wheel out and we say. But I'm guessing that actually, if you some more pessimistic, frustrated people pick that apart and basically say that's a load of rubbish, right? Because that person clearly isn't doing their best. But I think that they are. And when I try and rationalize this in my mind, I think best is relative. You know, if you are, like, I don't know, on a good day, I can bend right round and I can touch that thing over there behind me. Today isn't a good day. I ache because I was mucking around on the pull-up bar and did too much. Honestly, that's the problem. I hit 40, I bought a pull-up bar and I use it, and now I've hurt my back. So today, my best is half an hour it would be in 2 days' time.
You sound like me on pretty much every day I come back from the gym. So yes, we all experience it.
Yeah, and so my best on a day when I'm limber and nothing's aching is a light year apart from my best on a day when I'm aching and I'm tired. And the idea that I think that people need to understand when we're talking about this is that best is relative to what that person's living through in that moment. And if they're sitting down and they're disengaged and they just don't care, right, that is them trying their best, but just trying their best just to kind of switch off because this is not the thing they want to engage in right now. They haven't got the headspace for that. So it's and I think this is a really important thing that I think I and other people, we gloss over too much.
Oh, easy, absolutely, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off because I was listening. Because I'm over here thinking like, this is a good thought. So I'm over here capturing notes myself. I was like, that's a good point that he's making. So I apologize. I didn't want to cut you off, but you were still going. No. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, mate, no, not at all. Over to you. I'm interviewing you.
Okay. Well, again, it's a dialogue, it's a conversation. That is so true, because like what I wrote down here, and this is something that I have to remind myself also, especially with my other colleagues that I work with on a regular basis, is it gives yourself or give other people in the room grace. because as you mentioned, we're not always going to be 100%. And I think, especially in times today, which unfortunately where people are getting laid off left and right, there is such a significant impact, not just on, let's say, somebody's performance, but also on their mental capacity just to like to compute things to begin with.
Mm.
It's very often that in situations like this, the natural human reaction is to just buckle down, say your little like book on LinkedIn of like, oh, it's so unfortunate that Microsoft, Google, Capital One, and all these people are like laying off. Let me go back and do my job because that's how some folks process these things, right?
Mm.
But it's okay to say, you know what? There's a lot that's happening. I'm not in a good space right now. So, like for example, my former employer, and I probably will not get hired for this after I say this, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. Is that Capital One laid off literally their entire Agile job family
Mm.
last week? So, Scrum Masters, coaches, portfolio delivery managers, oh, well, not portfolio, but like release train engineers, that entire job family got dropped. And I think to myself, because I was in that situation at one time, if I would have stayed at Capital One, a company at that point in time I was there for 7.5 years for, if I would have
Mm.
stayed there, I would have been included in that drop, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm on the outside looking in, knowing that there are so many great colleagues that I have worked with in my career that have taught me so much. And to see them like that, like it's nothing. Hearing stories about people who got hired this year and 2 weeks later got laid off. Those types of experience, it's difficult. And then I have to hear these stories. I'm getting texts from people like, "Oh my God, this happened to me," and now I have to now go into a meeting with some execs. How do you even begin to like manage and deal with those types of scenarios? And so, like what you were saying, resonated with me so much because in those types of situations, yes, I want to give my best. I'm not mentally there, man. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
not. Right? And so I have to give myself some grace and say, you know what? Today just ain't happening. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Expressing that to people, telling folks that, being comfortable to be able to tell folks that, because that's a whole other scenario of like psychological safety that we could talk about at another time, which is a great topic. But just in this moment, just to tell yourself, hey man, it's okay, it's fine. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's most important in those types of scenarios. Again, and bringing it back to facilitation, it's such a full-time job, man. You have to be able to do these things. You have to be able to see these scenarios, situations, and things of that nature to be able to effectively hold space for others in that room. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, I can't even begin to imagine like what folks over at Capital One are going to do when the product owner and that the dev leads or developers are going to run into conflict. You got nobody in that room who can facilitate that conflict. So
Yeah.
what you gonna do? It's not saying that teams won't be able to do it, and I am 1,000% confident we have some. They have some really
Yeah.
great developers and really great folks in that organization. But it's going to be a rough patch for a long time. And if if executives are seeing this, because then I know your podcast reaches millions and millions and millions, I would say that decision was a very not the best. It was, as some people would say, as I've learned, is a career limiting decision.
Mm.
That's how I would say. So
I mean, like, yeah, not. Yeah, let's spend a moment talking about it, and we'll come back to facilitation.
yeah,
I'll weave us back in there. But I mean, it's just that's a huge sweeping decision to make. I mean, what organization is robust enough just to Thanos an entire role family? You know, like that just seems really extreme. Like someone's had a really bad day, and then how can I make myself feel better? Oh no, I'll be an absolute shit to 1,100 people. That's how I make myself better. I mean, I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm speculating, but
and like you don't think that it's that kind of decision. Continue. I'm sorry.
It's just crazy. It's just I just can't get my head around it. Like I can't, it's sad and it's terrible, right? And it's affected too many people. But what happens to lead you to make a decision like that?
So again, all of this is without insider knowledge to the people who are making a decision. So put that nice little disclaimer on there. This is always speculation at the other end, right? And again, this is the LinkedIn post that I got featured on, by the way.
Yeah.
That I mentioned very early because I was just like, it makes no sense. I literally said, it makes no sense why they're getting rid of a job family like this. And then again, LinkedIn was like, your post has been featured on this. I'm like, great, fantastic. So if I wasn't getting hired after this podcast, I'm definitely not getting hired.
No, I think that ship sailed.
That ship sailed a long time ago. Anyways, no, but what Capital One always promoted is that we are a financial organization that's really a tech company. So think of your SoFi financials, that type of scenario, right? And when you look at a lot of other tech organizations, such as the Amazons, the Microsofts, the Googles, all of those different types of organizations, they never had that role specifically for somebody who would do that, right? So you had program managers that did some of that stuff, but still they were focused on large initiatives that cross multiple teams. But when you have a company who claims to be a tech company, it's not just what they're doing. It's not the technologies that they use. It's the roster of associates that they have and the disciplines and things that they practice. And when you compare 1-to-1, that role doesn't exist at these major tech companies, these Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies. So for Capital One, I guess my assumption is that if we're a tech company, this is part of that transition for us to make sure that we're getting to that level. And I can see that's their reasoning behind it. And it's always funny because if you are ever on blind.com, which is the site that associates use to post anonymous stuff about the company, so they can complain and not be on Slack or anywhere else.
I've not heard of that before. That's interesting.
Ooh, it is fun. It is fun to be on one of those sites. But what you see, because also there's a specific, if you log in with your email and verify through your email, you can actually get to a very specific sub focus based off your company. Anyways, you see a lot of times, and I think I can weave this back in facilitation. So let's see how this works. Is a lot of times the associates, especially developers would complain about what does my, at the time, Agile Delivery Lead do? They don't do anything. They complain. They make us do a whole bunch of other different stuff that we are not asking to do or we don't want to do. And they get paid way too much. Again, a bunch of people were griping about it. And this is all prior the change, the layoff. And then there's a sudden shift of, oh my God, what are we going to do without our Agile Delivery Leads? What are we going to do without our Scrum Masters, coaches, there's so much process. There's so much that they do. There's so much value that they bring to the organization. I can't see us even succeeding as an organization in doing this. And it's y'all were just a few weeks ago complaining that they didn't do anything. Now you see the value that they bring.
Yeah.
And now everybody's like, oh, snap, what are we going to do? But that's the same exact thing that you see in every organization. And that's what kind of stinks, because I think it's just especially with facilitation, it's such an underrated skill. And if you do it really well, people sometimes don't really notice. They're just hey, we're used to having conflict on our team and that's okay, but we're able to work through it. But you're only able to work through it if you have somebody who's in that room and kind of helping be the referee during that conflict and bringing people together. And it's, again, I don't see a person who's going to fill that role at that company. And if you are a company who's considering doing something similar, I would take a second to pause and think about, ask some folks, what does your Scrum Masters, coaches, release training engineers do to make sure that the wheels keep spinning? So, yeah.
And that's one of those curious things. I think facilitation is one of the most underrated skills and practices that we have in life. And when I would say, go on a limb here, I would say that great facilitation, good facilitation beats a lot of coaching. I think that coaching individuals in a team environment, I'm whatever. Yeah, sure, that helps individuals, but won't necessarily help team performance. If you look at team coaching and you design an activity and you want people to go through that activity, then you're going to be facilitating as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
For
when
sure.
people when there's conflict, you're not going to sit them down and have a coaching conversation with them. You're going to try and help them through the conversation. You're going to facilitate it. You're not going to bring in you're not going to come in and say, oh, well, you just didn't follow that agile principle properly, or get involved
Oh
in
yeah.
some other way. You know, I think facilitation is such a really powerful tool that
Mm-hmm.
I think when it happens and it's effort and it seems effortless for people don't realize what that person is bringing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but then when that person isn't there, then they realize what they brought.
Right.
And then they turn around and say, like, well, I can't replicate what that person was doing because I didn't even realize they were doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just happens, right? A lot of, and again, that's the beauty of it, right? Like this person is in this room, and I know it's very annoying sometimes because like my developers that I've worked with in past, I'll ask them like, well, what do you think? Well, I asked you. I'm like, well, I have opinions, but you're the one who's seeing it day to day. You're gonna have more expertise than I am, so
Yeah.
I can give us some like guardrails and some guidelines that kind of help us along the journey. But I'm not the one who's going to be here to execute it. My
Yeah.
thing is to keep you honest on that front and say this is what we agreed to at the end. But it's a struggle a lot of times when folks don't realize that there's that person is no longer there. And again, as I mentioned in the very onset of this entire like sidebar, is that I feel that organizations, specifically Capital One, is going to struggle quite a bit because there's not going to be that person in the room that's going
Mm.
to 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 help again bring folks together and move on to this, make a decision point moving forward. So yeah,
Yeah, well, sadly, only time will tell, which is the shit thing about it, you know.
it
But
is a crap
if
thing about
anybody, it is crap. It is crap. And if anyone has been affected by this and wants to talk right about opportunities or the market or whatever, then guys, CPI, you're open to people contacting you. I'm open to people
Oh, for
contact
sure.
me.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
can. I think I mentioned my email earlier,
yeah,
at icagile.com. So please take the time, reach out to me, send me a message, whatever it is, whatever I can do, even if it's not a hey, I have a job opportunity on my team today.
yeah.
At least I can. What I can do is point you in the right direction. I've been trying to do that with as many folks as I possibly can. So if
Mm.
you have an opportunity for Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, Agile leaders, whatever it is, please reach out to me so I can get that to other people. And yeah. Oh, I completely forgot. Also, I know this is what happened when I'm like going down a rabbit hole. Also, Agile in Color has coaching and mentorship, which folks don't may not know. Real quick sidebar: Agile in Color is a
Yeah.
nonprofit organization that within the Agile community that's sponsored by the Agile Alliance that focuses on supporting um, specifically Black Agiles, but Agilists of all different backgrounds, whether
Mhm.
it's coaching, training, mentorship, all the good jazz. So if you want a mentor or a coach or just somebody to listen to you vent about their frustrations, go to agileincolor.org.
Mhm.
Click, drop your information in there, and we will get you added, and we'll get you connected to a coach or mentor or whatever services you may need.
Is that a global offer?
That is
As in,
absolutely global. We have members on our core team who are in the U.S., in Canada, South America, and also in South Africa. So
oh,
it's a
nice.
global offer for everybody.
I mean, I've spoken to a few. I don't know if they'd be interested in it, but a few brilliant people in Nigeria, like just like different level,
Yeah,
brilliant,
it's
brilliant,
yeah.
like so skilled what they do. You know, so good. And I wonder if they would be interested in that. So I will put the details for that in the show notes and promote it as well because it sounds like a brilliant initiative. And in fact, it's global as well. Like just
Yes.
yeah, what a thing to do. What a thing to do. Um, now talk about things to do. I'm looking at the time. We're getting on a little bit, but I'm going to say let's make this one a little bit longer because there was something I wanted to
For sure.
bring up about facilitation.
Okay.
Let's see how long this conversation goes on for.
Lightning round, almost like let's see.
But let's yeah. Let's see. They say lightning can't strike twice, but I think that maybe with us it might strike a few times.
No, it hasn't struck once if you were talking to me. I'm sorry.
We spoke about facilitation and getting helping people contribute and kind of getting the most out of the group. And I have been very interested over the years in this concept of in-groups and out-groups.
Okay.
Which is, we like people, or we are drawn to people that we have something in common with, or something that we agree on together. So the classic one is sports teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like I support team A. I think supporters of team B are all scum of the earth. Yeah. I'm exaggerating, but it's that kind of thing.
I mean, I don't know. We talking about English Premier League, yeah.
Like I am I'm a product person. I think all those agile people are just crazy. I just don't get it. I'm a lean.
We have some characters.
Yeah, like I'm totally into Kanban, Scrum. All those Scrum people do not have a clue what they're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the idea of in groups and out groups, and there's some great research on it, and we form it all the time, everywhere. And in groups are really important to us. Like our family is an in group, and that's really important. And our friends are an in group. And I think some of the times our role as a facilitator is to help blur the lines of the in groups and the out groups and create new in groups. Mm-hmm. So in your facilitation practice, have you ever been in situations where you can kind of see that there's an in group and an out group in the room, and you've been able to bring them together in some way? Yeah. And how did you do that?
Yeah. So firstly, thank you for the question. This is a very an interview behavioral question. Great. Thank you for the question. But what you see a lot of times is, and actually this is a really good example, that if you are new to a team, you are automatically in that out group scenario, right? So you have to now try to ingratiate yourself into a team, and making sure that folks trust you, because I think that's the most important thing that you need to have to be an effective facilitator. And a lot of times, in those types of scenarios, it's always that good first either retrospective or that conflict that happens within that team that allows you to then be part of an in-group. So that's tremendously helpful. But I would kind of bring it back a little bit, because that's a scenario about myself, and I would want to talk about team situation. So a lot of times you have, this is always a great example because I know everybody sees this, is that you have your developers that were there at the birth of the product, and they were the ones who wrote that first line of code, and they're the ones that understand what that random to do comment is from 6 years ago. They're like, oh yeah, I still needed to do that, and they've been through every different refactor. They have changed from Java to Python, and Java from Python to React, and React, they've seen it all, right? And then you have the new kid on the block who is using Chat AI and GitHub Copilot to help write their unit tests, which is really funny. If you haven't used Chat AI, it is so cool to see. And a lot of times what you have to do is to find what some of those commonalities are. Of course, there's always the common goal of what my product does and what we are trying to accomplish, right? Those are really easy, but a lot of times, especially if you're with some people, especially the vets on the team, they're just I've seen it all, kid. I've been there, done that. But what I've found a lot of times, especially for your vets and for your the new folks, is to sometimes, and this is probably a little self-deprecation, is to put yourself as the rallying point that everybody can rally around and say okay, either, and I put myself in very fun situations sometimes, of hey, let's razz CP a little bit, or let's give him, a little bit of a headache, or whatever the situation is, right? If you can be that commonality that people can rally around, whether it's good or whether you want it to be good or positive, right? But sometimes you can be hey, this is, I'm gonna come up with some random activity or just something that's just in general that everybody's just going to strongly dislike, right? But you're doing it on purpose, right? Yeah. And say okay, we're gonna do this whole kumbaya activity. Everybody named Mom is just not gonna be down with this. That's okay too, because here's the thing. Again, this is really important about facilitation: is you can see, feel, understand that it's not hitting. You can bring it back to folks and say, okay, if you don't like this activity, and that's okay, because I knew you probably wouldn't, what would you like to see? What would you like to change? What would you like to get better? Mm-hmm. What are the differences that you all see? Because sometimes a lot of those differences aren't really big divergent points. They're just more of, hey, here's maybe a disconnect with how things are doing. So what I have done is just use myself as that lightning rod, I guess, for
Hmm.
folks to rally around and make myself as like a point that people can like start to create um, that in group, right? And say
Hmm.
like it's all of us versus CP or whatever situation. Again, in a very positive manner. But I think
Yeah.
whatever you can do to kind of help create commonalities in people is just going to be super effective, because then when it gets down to the hey, we are all in this together, that's when you start to see the benefits. You start to see like the vets helping the new kids showing new tech and new ways to approach things to the vets, and that's where you really start to see the positives come from that. I hope that it
Hmm.
makes sense. Please let me know that doesn't make sense, but yeah.
No, I think it makes sense to me. I mean, what you're doing it sounds like it's quite a brave thing, and I'm going to make an aspersion here, which is you have to be reasonably confident in yourself to make yourself the focus of ire, that make yourself that lightning rod. Give create that common enemy for people to rally around, even if it is in play. I think you have to have strong relationships and pretty comfortable in your own skin to take that level of risk, which
It's
I love, and I
it's
think it's a nice approach.
it's definitely tough, right? And I think I've only learned that through time, right? I've
Mhm.
learned that because everybody has their different style and their different approach. You have to figure out what works best for you. And I think what I've learned a lot of times with me is that I'm fine with you giving me crap. That's totally okay, because at the end of the day, if that gets you all to work together and to move forward and
Mm.
to whatever the situation is, sure, I have no problem with it. But I think a lot of times some folks are just uncomfortable with it because they want to be seen doing such a good job and the perfect.
Mm.
You don't have to worry about that. The thing about this is that are you just getting better each and every day? If you're okay with that, I think everything will work out in the end.
Yeah, perfect is the enemy of good, as they
Oh
say.
God, yes. Now I got to tell myself that, reminding myself that all the time. So yeah,
Every morning, every morning.
yeah.
CP, I think we should bring this episode to a close. It's been a surprising turn talking about a lot of Capital One stuff, but I think it needed to be spoken about. And seeing as you were featured on LinkedIn, why not? Why not pick up that point?
I mean, again, of all things, I'd rather not it be that, but
So, closing thought: if you could be featured on LinkedIn for saying one thing, what is the thing you'd like to be featured for?
ooh, that is an excellent question. Okay, so if it was one thing, this actually is a quote that I came across recently that has really resonated and stuck with me as I was preparing for this chat, and that was our ability to work together. That's our greatest strength, not individual excellence. And
Beautiful.
I was like, that is a freaking solid quote. And I slightly considered getting a tattoo of it. But my wife was like, yeah, no, that's probably a little much.
And, and on that bombshell, we will we'll end the episode so I can say Chris is actually going to show me. He did get the tattoo. He's going to show it to me in a minute. And we'll be joined again by CP, where we are going to pick up some conversations around product and platform. Because of the actual Arc XP and the environment you're working in is a fascinating one in my mind. So we'll delve deeper into that. CP, thank you so much for your time and being such an awesome guest. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
like I said, all good, man. All part of the service. And thank you everyone for listening. And we will be back again at some point soon. And that draws this episode to an end. For those of you on the video, you would have seen I waved my hand up in the air, and for some strange abstract reason, I'm not sure. Now, CP is a fantastic human, as I said at the top, and he is joining us for another episode next week. So do be sure to subscribe. Make sure that you get notifications on your podcast platform of choice so that you're notified of the second part of our conversation. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you, CP, for coming on. It's been a pleasure. And we look forward to welcoming you back next week on the Product Agility Podcast.